In this lesson, we'll cover multiplanar rebar. So you may say, what is multiplanar rebar? It's similar to drawing a single segment of rebar, but the difference is it copies it from one plane to another and then connects the two together. So for example, if you use a beam to draw an element of rebar on, say you draw a single element of rebar on one end, the multiplanar technique will allow you to copy it to the other end and connect the two together. So we'll actually create multiplanar rebar in this section on our screen. So let's go ahead and zoom in to the lower right side of this section. Now currently there is already a rebar element in this lower section, but we're going to add another one. And we're going to sketch this and we're going to make it multiplanar. Once we do that, we'll look at it in 3D. So let's go to the Structure tab on your ribbon, click Rebar. Once the rebar command starts, the type and shape of rebar we'll use is going to be all the way at the bottom. It's going to be the rebar shape rebar 1. So go ahead and select that. If you do not see the rebar shape browser on the right, on the options bar, there's 3 little buttons that'll launch this shape browser on the right. You can also select it from the drop-down list. Now, once we have that selected, what I need to do is click Sketch Rebar. Now, Revit's going to ask us to pick the host for which we want to sketch the rebar on. And I'm going to select this beam. Right now, I'm looking at this beam at the edge of it. So it's coming out at me in the screen. Go ahead and select that. Once you do, Revit's going to ask you to simply start to sketch your rebar. But before I do that, on the ribbon on the right in the reinforcement area, click Multiplanar. Now, with the single line tool in the draw panel, I'm simply going to start to draw this rebar. Now, the shape and the length for this example isn't really important. It's more or less the technique of what we're doing. So I'm going to draw a line vertical and then draw a line to the left, indicating this shape of the rebar. When I'm done, simply click the green check mark. Now, as I can see, it draws the rebar within this section view. To make it visible in other views, we need to select the rebar and modify it. First, click Modify on your ribbon to end the command. Then, select that rebar that we just added. Once it's selected, in the property area on the left, scroll down to the graphics section where we see View Visible States. Click Edit. What we want to do is turn on or check mark the view unobscured in a 3D view and also view it as a solid. So that way it shows up in our three-dimensional view, even through the floor and through the actual beam that's sitting in. Click OK. Now let's switch to our default 3D view. So click the default 3D view on the top of your Revit window. This will open the three-dimensional view, and when we zoom in, I can actually see now that rebar element created. So you can see the profile shape on one end of the square that's illustrating the beam. It's actually mirrored or copied to the other end, and then the two are connected together based on how we drew the rebar. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at creating multiplanar rebar. Basically, where you draw rebar on one plane, and then it's copied to another plane, and then those two planes are connected. We did this using a beam as an example, where we drew an element of rebar on one side of a beam. We made sure multiplanar was activated, which Revit then made a copy of that rebar on the other side of the beam and then connected the two together. Lastly, we looked at it in 3D.